All right, I guess we can start now. Welcome everyone to the eighth talk in the College Talk series hosted by Inflow Communications. Today we have with us Sadhika from UC Berkeley, and she will be sharing with us her college application journey. Hi Sadhika, we're glad to have you with us today. So the College Talk series is a set of Zoom webinars where we hope to improve the exposure to and knowledge of the college application process among high school students by bringing in students from various universities to share their experiences. Before we start our session, I would like to request all of you to keep your microphones muted and videos off throughout the meeting. Please refrain from annotating on the screens. And lastly, post all your questions in the chat box. They will be asked to the speaker in the latter half of the session. Thank you all for joining us today. Sadhika, you can now take over.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sadhika, and I'm a freshman intending to major in economics at UC Berkeley. Go Bears. Before we start, I want to thank Sarthak and everyone at Inflow for letting me share my college journey, and everyone here for taking time out for this presentation. So let me just, okay. Yeah. So firstly, UC Berkeley is renowned as the world's #1 public university. It is highly ranked, especially for its economics, computer science, business at the Haas School of Business, cellular biology and chemistry programs. It's also well known for its incredible faculty. We have 110 Nobel laureates in total. And just last week, 2 of our faculty members received Nobel Prizes for their work in chemistry and physics. So the people who will be teaching you if you choose Berkeley are incredibly qualified and at the top of their field. I applied to college all over the world, UBC and U of T in Canada, the UCs in the US, a bunch of colleges in the UK, and Ashoka in India. But I always knew that Berkeley was my dream school ever since I visited the campus before the summer of my senior year. And it's located in Northern California near the Bay and near one of the best cities in the world, San Francisco. And I'd never seen such incredible school spirit before. And but most of my decisions came out before February, but the one I anticipated most came out on the 27th of March, which was my last college decision. And getting into Berkeley was a dream come true. So, however, I didn't commit immediately because there's a lot of things I had to consider. I'm an Indian citizen, and I had to look at the work opportunities versus the cost, living alone in a foreign country, the increasing restrictions on immigrants from the Department of Homeland Security. But in the end, I found that the value of education that I was going to get from UC Berkeley to be worth it, which is why I committed to Berkeley. And so it's just a quick overview of my statistics. I did the SAT in March 2019, and I had a 1560. That's a 770 in reading and writing and a 790 in math. I did one subject SAT, which was chemistry, and I got a 790 in that. I did the IB diploma program at Greenwood High in Bangalore, and I got a 43 on 45 there. And I also did the IGCSE program in 10th grade. So I had like 9 A stars over there. Moving on, these were my extracurriculars. So the activity that I wrote the most essays about was my art enterprise, Sadi Paints. I have an Instagram page called Sadi Paints where I posted a few of the works that I did. So do check it out if you have the time. So this was like my mechanism to integrate my understanding of economics and my favorite subject and my passion for art, which is something I really like to do. And so in 10th grade, I started making and selling paintings to raise money for a home for disabled children. And till date, I've raised 12,500 rupees for them. And I was also involved in the Knowledge at Wharton High School's investment competition with a few of my friends. So we were finalists at the National Stock Exchange in Mumbai after a 6-month process of researching and investing virtual money for our client. I was also involved in a lot of community service activities. So I taught English and math for kids diagnosed with HIV on weekends through the summer of 2018. I was involved with Rotary Interact. So they had a lot of community service programs every month. They had bake sales for autism awareness. We repainted sidewalks and trash cans at Cubbon Park. We repainted government schools. We painted like educational murals at government schools. So I would recommend Rotary Interact. It's a great way to get involved with your community. And lastly, I was also the house captain at my school at my school's student council. So I think the activities that stood out in my application were my art enterprise, Sadi Paints, and my involvement in the Knowledge at Wharton High School's investment competition. So because I think they especially stood out for my Why This Major essays because across many countries, because they really showed how my interests in extracurriculars seem to be inherently tied to economics. And Sadi Paints was like a great way for me to implement the concepts I learned at school in real life. For instance, making pricing decisions for my paintings based on consumer elasticity. And kwhs was a way that I got hands-on experience with actuarial science and investing, and an insight into something that I want to explore as a career. So yeah, in my opinion, if you emphasize on the activities that you're most passionate about and that uniquely tie to your academic interests, it's a great way to stand out to your admissions officers. So, yep, that's all I have. Thank you for listening. I'll just read your questions. Yeah, so are you currently in Berkeley? Okay, so for this semester, Berkeley is online. So I'm an Indian citizen, and to live in Berkeley and go to school there, I would need a visa. And right now, the consulates across India were closed, so I couldn't really get a visa. So yeah, I'm taking classes online from home. When did I do? I did kwhs when I was in 11th grade. So that's from September 2018 to February 2019. What schools would you recommend which have a good overlap of architecture and economics? Well, I know that the architecture program at Berkeley and UCLA are really great. But like Berkeley is renowned in the College of Natural Resources for architecture, and it's highly ranked for economics. So I would recommend Berkeley, of course. But a few colleges that are really well known for their economics program, I'm sorry, I'm not too sure of architecture, are U Chicago, Duke, and Stanford. But like Stanford was a reach for me anyway. But yeah, as an Indian citizen, what did you find out about job prospects after Cal? Right, yeah. So this was one of the reasons why I took a really long time to make my college decisions, because of the increasing restrictions for like immigrants in America. But I know that UC Berkeley has really, especially for economics, it has great ties with like the biggest firms out there. Like for instance, what I want to get into, like investment banking, we have ties with like Goldman Sachs and all the big banks. And the thing is, there are lots of opportunities for you to do internships between summers in Berkeley, and it's also required. So it's a great opportunity to, enhance your resume, because there are lots of there are lots of like institutions in place in Berkeley that will help you explore your career interests, that will give you counseling and get you internships where you want them. And for Indian citizens, basically, if you're not getting a degree in STEM, you have 1 year to work in the US. If you don't do STEM, you have 1 year to work in the US. But if you get a degree in STEM, you get 3 years. You're eligible for 3 years to work in the US. What colleges did I apply to? So I didn't apply to many colleges in the US because I'm an Indian citizen, so I sort of applied everywhere. I applied to the UCs, UCLA, UC Berkeley, UC Irvine and SD, and I think Northwestern and Amherst. I applied to UBC and University of Toronto in Canada. I applied to a bunch of colleges in the UK, like King's College London and Durham. And I applied to Ashoka University in India. Is volunteering and community service is essential for getting into the UCs? Okay, so one thing I can say for the UCs is that for the most competitive ones, for UC Berkeley and UCLA, they place more emphasis on your academics, and then they look at your extracurriculars. So the thing is, extracurriculars for the UC Berkeley and UCLA do matter, but first and foremost, they have a lot of like academic requirements, as in you have to be in the top 10 percentile of your class academically, and you need a good SAT score. They place a lot of emphasis on standardized testing. But it is also important to be involved in your community, because that's what all your essays are about. So for UC Berkeley and UCLA, they are important, but academics are more important. But for other UCs, such as UC San Diego and UC Irvine, community service, volunteering, all your extracurriculars play a greater role. So besides the KWHS, would you recommend any internships, research programs for anyone interested in economics? Yeah, for sure. There's a whole, in the UC application, there is a whole section for internships and research programs where you write about who you've worked for and what you've done. So I would definitely recommend it. I did not do any because I couldn't find any, but I would recommend it. It's something that I wish I did during my time in high school. How generous is UC Berkeley in terms of financial aid? Okay, so I'm an Indian citizen, so I get $0 in financial aid. It is expensive for everyone who lives outside of California. So I don't know so basically it's around $30,000 to $40,000 for residents of California, and it's about $70,000 to everyone outside of California. So it is expensive. So it's something that you have to think about before applying, I guess. But the thing is, if you're an American citizen, and even if you live outside of California, you can get I think loans from, I don't know, I'm not too sure about this, but I've heard of some of my friends who are American citizens who applied to the UCs, who got aid in the form of loans. So yeah. Which school did you do your IB in? I did my IB in Greenwood High in Bangalore. So, okay, yeah. Any tips about college application essays? I would say that the thing about college essays is that you need to be truthful and you need to write about things that are most meaningful to you. You know, in your life, you may look at all your experiences and think, oh, this is what admissions officers would like to hear. This is something that that is like for example, a significant achievement like great grades or this award that you've gotten. But I would recommend that instead you should write about the experiences that are most meaningful to you, that made an impact in your life, that you can truly write about, rather than the ones that look good, if that makes sense. So for instance, if you write about things that are that you are most passionate about, it'll come to you easily, and you can make a meaningful impression on your admissions officers. I would also recommend, I mean, I didn't have a counselor. So I made my parents read my essays, and I made my friends read my essays. So yeah, get a lot of feedback from whoever you can, because when you're looking at your essays, you think, okay, yeah, this is pretty good, but other people can help you they can help point at the parts where you can improve and stuff. How important do you think is an external counselor in the applications process? Okay, so for the colleges that I applied to, like the UCs, which are public schools, and colleges in Canada and the UK and Ashoka, I didn't need an external counselor. But in my opinion, private schools in America, like for instance, I applied to Northwestern and Amherst, and they're extremely competitive. And yeah, I think if I had an external counselor, I could have improved on the essay aspect of my application. So if you're thinking private schools in America, I think a counselor can really help you figure out how to draft your essays and make the most of your college application process. Besides IELTS, what other preparations are required? What all does UC consider besides academics? Okay, preparations as in for international students, because the UCs don't even need the IELTS if your school's primary language of instruction is English. So you don't need to do the IELTS for the UCs, if that's what you're asking. But you do need to do the IELTS for, if you're an international student, for visa purposes later on when you're applying for a visa. And you also need IELTS for Canadian colleges. That's a requirement, but it's not a requirement in most American colleges. What does the UC consider beside academics? There are only like two aspects to it. It's academics and your extracurriculars and your essays. That's three. I'm sorry. But yeah, like I said, for UCLA and UC Berkeley, academics are more important than your extracurriculars or your essays. But for all the other UCs, they all have equal weightage: your essays, your extracurriculars, and your grades. Which standardized test did you write, and when did you start working on your essays and application? So I did the SAT, and I did the subject sats as well, and I did IELTS, if that's a standardized test. Those are the only standardized tests that I did. Yeah, and I started working on my application September of my senior year. So yeah, September 2019, that's when I started. How many colleges did you apply to, and how many did you get into from those? Okay, I have to do a little bit of math for this, hold on. So I applied to 4 UCs, 2 Canadian colleges, 3 American private schools, 1 Indian college, 5 UK colleges, and 1 college in Singapore and 1 college in Abu Dhabi. And out of those, I got in to 14 of my schools. Yes. What are your top tips for preparing for standardized testing? Right. So for the UCs especially, Standardized testing is really important. Um, so I did the SAT, and I did it twice because the first time I didn't like the score that I got. And I would recommend to improve, like, use all the resources that are available to you. I went for SAT prep classes in Bangalore. I had a Kaplan book that sort of covered everything and had practice tests inside too, and that was really helpful. And I also use Khan Academy like every day. And people underestimate how useful Khan Academy is, but it's really good as a resource, and it's free. And I would recommend it to everyone if you're still doing the SAT, and do the practice tests on Khan Academy. They're great. Are there any extra requirements for applications to universities in the UK? So colleges in the UK, they do not care about your extracurriculars as much. They care about your grades mostly, and you have to write one essay for all the colleges that you're applying to. But I think it's different if you're applying to Cambridge or Oxford. I didn't apply to those, so I'm not too sure about their application process. But if you're applying to the UK, all you need are grades. You probably have to do the IELTS for visa purposes. And you just need to write a 650 word personal statement, which is your why this major essay plus the extracurriculars you did that tie in with your intended major. Given that it's not safe to out, what kind of community service would you suggest? So yeah, I understand in pandemic situations it's hard, but the Rotary Interact Club that I used to be a part of, they have like Zoom calls every weekend to discuss current issues. And I think they, I'm not too sure what they do, but they've adapted to being able to serve their community in pandemic conditions. And I also I know a few people from my old high school who have these, who advertise their activities on Instagram accounts. But I know this one group that sort of, they do it in a safe way, of course, but they give out food packages to immigrants and people in need because of the pandemic. I know people who are sort of making and selling things to raise money for people affected by the pandemic. Yeah, so there are a lot of ways that you can adapt. And I think that if you can figure out a way to do community service in a pandemic, it's great essay material as well, because you're doing the most to help out your community. So yeah, I can link you up with the Instagram accounts and the groups that I'm talking about. If you're interested, you can text me on Radisao on my Instagram, and I'll let you know about the organizations that I'm talking about. Where in Bangalore did you go for SAT coaching? Okay, yeah, the thing is, I don't know if they're still there anymore, but I used to go to this place called Atharva Education. It's sort of, if you guys know Revisor, people from Revisor sort of made the subsidiary coaching class called Atharva. What are the essential paperwork required? Could you elaborate on that? Like paperwork for college applications or the visa application, or I don't know, what are you talking about? What are good SAT prep classes in Bangalore? Right, honestly, yeah, from what I've heard, Revisor is good. And for me, Atharva was good, but I don't know if they're still functioning anymore. I'm really sorry, but there are a lot of resources online. You should get the SAT prep books from Kaplan and Princeton Review and Barron's if you're doing the subject sets. and Khan Academy. So if you can't find stat prep classes right now because of the pandemic, don't worry, you have a lot of options online. And also I have to, I forgot, I can't believe I didn't mention this, but because of COVID, the UCs don't require the SAT or any standardized testing for the next academic year. So if you weren't able to do if you weren't able to do the SAT, it's all right. You're good. It's okay. How can an average student get into the UC? Is it even possible? Of course it's possible. I mean, so for UCLA and UC Berkeley, I think it's a bit harder for international students who are academically average to get in. But if you have great extracurriculars that complement your application, you have a great chance. But for the other UCs, it's definitely possible if you're an average student, but you have other things that can complement your application. Because one thing about American colleges is that they take a holistic approach towards your application. It's not one thing that sort of determines your fate or whatever. But I would agree, it is harder on average, since the UCs are public schools. Like Californian kids who are average have a better chance of getting in. But you know, like, do your best. I'm sure you'll have a great chance. How flexible is the switching of majors at UCs? Okay, so the thing about, I don't know about all the UCs, but at Berkeley, some colleges are more competitive than others. For example, the engineering college or the EECS, what's it called? Electrical engineering and computer science. The certain majors are basically more competitive than others. So when you're applying, you sort of have to declare your college preferences in order. Yeah, basically some schools like Haas, the College of Engineering and Computer Science, are harder to get into. So once you get in, it's harder to switch into those colleges. But right now I'm undeclared in the College of Letters and Sciences, but I am planning to apply to the business school later. It is hard and it's very competitive, but it is definitely possible. You just have to you just have to complete all the major requirements and make sure you have like a strong GPA. And there's probably an application. I'm not sure about engineering or computer science, but for business, I know that there's an application process for you to go through in your sophomore year. So it's hard, but it's possible. Yeah. Are the UCs good for subjects like psychology and architecture? Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Psychology is one of the most popular majors in my college, the College of Letters and Sciences. And I know architecture is really renowned in the College of Natural Resources at my school. And I know for a fact that the CNR College gets a lot of resources from the federal government. So there are a lot of, if you do architecture in this college, there are a lot of opportunities for you like outside school for research and for like your own projects and stuff. Do the UCs have any requirements regarding the IB subjects you should take if you're pursuing a certain major? Specifically, are there any requirements for an economics major? No, there aren't. That's a great aspect about the UCs. So like other colleges in countries like in the UK, for example, they require Math HL for doing economics, but the UCs are very flexible. You don't have any prerequisites once you enter, because you're undeclared. You have to sort of complete certain courses to declare your major in like your second year. So if you do competitive courses in high school, like Math HL and AP courses, for instance, you get credit. Once you go to college, you don't have to do those courses again to indicate your major at the end of your second year. But you won't be penalized if you haven't done certain subjects. Like for me, math HO. So once you get to college, you have to do it at college. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, so I think that's all the questions. So thank you guys for being here and listening to my presentation. And if you have any more questions that come up during the application process, you can text me on my Instagram, and this is my email if you want to write to me. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to the audience.
Oh, sorry. Was there an interview round for the? No, there's no interview round for the UCs. I think it's because just too many people across the world apply for them to have to carry out interviews. Also, because so many people apply, you don't even need letters of recommendation for the UCs. Is there some restriction for applying to any other particular Ivies after applying to Princeton? Okay, so I'm not equipped to answer this question because I didn't apply to Princeton, but I do know that certain Ivy Leagues, I think Princeton, Harvard, and also Stanford, they have this restrictive early action thing where if you want to apply early, you can only apply there. I'm not too sure, so you might want to, yeah, you should probably ask my friend Arpith. He goes to Harvard. This is his Instagram. If you have any questions about Ivy Leagues, he's more equipped to answer them. And did you apply for early decisions? No, I did not. Yep, thank you. I did not.
All right, great. I don't think I see any other questions coming in, but thank you for joining us, as I said before. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, how do I?